Many of us have a childhood memory that has left us puzzled and, even when we reach adulthood, may still remain unexplained. In these two accounts sent by Weird World viewers, some of those puzzled young witnesses have later revisited their early experience and now realise that the incident was a bizarre paranormal event. Second son. By way of background, Derek Pierce was born in 1957 and he and his 4 siblings were raised by their mum. He had 2 older brothers who were 10 and 14 years his senior and so not around much. His sister was 9 years older than Derek and his third brother was 3 years his junior. They lived in a 3-bedroom house, so it was always busy, noisy and cramped. This was a council house on an estate in Borehamwood, a small town north of London. While Derek says the family didn't have much in the way of possessions, he and his brother would happily play in the small garden at the back when the weather was fine. They attended the local schools and had a very normal life. However, one memory continued to play on his mind, which he remembers as a dream he'd had. He knew that the remembered event must have occurred when he was small, but he has never forgotten about it. Derek remembers that he was in the back garden on a hot and sunny day when he saw a second sun drift over the garden. The round and yellow object stopped dead. He recalled that in his dream he looked up at it and then up at the true sun, but that hurt his eyes. Derek was confused as to how there could be 2 suns in the sky. He had the sense that someone was missing who should have been there and that some people had come to play with him and the other children. A further recollection came to him, which included a voice saying, "This one is of no interest." Then the bright circle of light moved slowly away over the large oak tree in his neighbour's garden. In his dream, he ran inside the house and tried to tell his mum that he had seen 2 suns, and that is how his dream ended. Years passed, although he never forgot the dream. As he grew up, he developed a fascination mixed with a dread of UFOs, although he had never seen one. He read books and magazines, becoming quite well read on the subject. However, his purported dream remained just that, so that he wondered if he must have embellished it over the years. Many years later, he travelled to Bideford in Devon to visit his sister who ran a pub in the town with her husband. One morning, before the pub was open, his sister sat with him and noticed that he was reading a book on UFOs, which he had purchased in the local bookshop. She asked if Derek had ever seen one, to which he answered no, and that he had only had this one dream, which he then described to her. At this point, Derek said that his sister laughed and said that it wasn't a dream. She said that she was there with him. She had been in the garden teaching him to read, which accords with Derek's memory of having been about 5 or 6 years old at the time. This was when the UFO appeared in the sky. Their brother, who was 3, was also in the garden. On hearing this account, every hair on Derek's body stood up, and he went into a state of shock. The revelation was such a shock to him that he couldn't think of anything to say, nor even ask her any questions. Finally, he was able to talk with her when she revealed that she apparently saw UFOs on multiple occasions, along with others in her company who also saw them. On one occasion, she recounted running away while pushing their niece in her pushchair as an object dropped down from the sky towards them. She was screaming, "Leave us alone!" But she still had no idea why she shouted that, and to that day seemed oddly concerned about such an event. Derek wonders if his sister was the person who he thought was missing for a time in his dream, and also whether perhaps he was a bystander to his sister's abduction. He is now 66, and her sister and her husband have both passed away, so it is impossible for him to gain any further information about these childhood events. His child's mind remembered this beyond unusual event as a dream, however, he has no doubts about his sister's accuracy in recounting it. Do you have a paranormal experience you'd like to share with our viewers? Record your story on your phone or write it down and email your video or written account to us at weirdworldstories@gmail.com. Floating car. Writing from southern Ecuador, Laura Lee Vaughanholt related a strange occurrence witnessed by her friend's mother and aunt when children. She has known her friend Marcy McMurphy since they were in the same class at school in the 1980s. Just to again confirm the authenticity of this account, Laura Lee interviewed Marcy, who spoke to her mother and aunt again about it, pressing for all the details she could get. Here is the very strange event that was witnessed by the two girls. It was a sunny day in late spring or early summer of 1943 when the Johnson sisters were playing in their front yard in College Place, Washington, in the United States. Darla, aged 5, and Dina, 7, loved playing in the shade of the large evergreen tree in their yard in the quiet college town. The little girls rarely looked up at passing traffic as they were too busy playing, but this day was different. A noisy racket captured their attention. They raised their eyes to see an old Model T Ford coming down 4th Street towards them. Curious, the little girls stood at the end of their front walkway watching the car chug past. A middle-aged man was sitting in the front seat, who was clean-shaven and driving carefully, with both hands on the wheel. He didn't notice the girls standing watching him, but they didn't get any sense of evil from him or feel fear in any way. In fact, he had a big smile on his face as he drove past, heading east away from College Avenue. Just past the end of the next block, Southeast 4th Street rises. The hill is quite long, rising from Southeast Elm Avenue before finally flattening out just before Larch Avenue. The car drove up the hill when, all of a sudden, halfway up the hill, it lifted straight up, as though tugged skyward by helium balloons. The sisters watched, spellbound, until the car disappeared in the clouds. Dina and Darla turned, each gaping at one another to see if their sister had seen it too. Then, dashing inside, they excitedly told their mother what they'd just seen. Mrs. Johnson exclaimed that their story was poppycock and laughed at their account. There was no rational or known technological explanation for what her little girls were describing, and she assumed it was just the children's over-imagination at work. Today, Dina and Darla are senior citizens with children and grandchildren. Just recently, however, Dina asked Darla if she remembered the strange sight they had seen as children. "Yes, I remember," Darla exclaimed. When Darla's daughter Marcy asked her mum what she had thought the strange occurrence was, she replied, "I thought it was an angel returning to heaven." Certainly neither girl had been afraid or had a sense of danger. They only felt curiosity and were drawn by the man's wide, happy smile. They still staunchly confirm each other's account of the bizarre apparition. Laura Lee knows the neighbourhood where their experience occurred and sent a link from Google Maps to the house and street where the girls were standing when they witnessed the event. The house is on a corner lot, and you can see in the distance the hill the car climbed, which she says is actually longer and steeper than it appears on Google Maps. The hill is on 4th Street that runs in front of Darla and Dina's former home. Laura Lee asks if we have heard of any phenomenon similar to this strange occurrence, and no, we have not. The shared apparition could be a time-slip event, but the car's ascent into the sky suggests the uncanny abilities of a ghost.